is good to see you guys. Can we make some noise for our band real quick? Every week, our band is killing it. And I don't know if you noticed, Tyler was playing drums this morning. I've never seen Tyler play drums. He's always over here playing piano and singing. He's got like an angel voice and he can play drums. That's amazing. Tyler's the MVP. But guys, I'm so glad you guys are here. I mean, it's a holiday weekend. You guys chose to make Bayshore a part of your holiday, and we're so pumped about that. Now, I got to confess, I don't know what holiday we're really celebrating. I don't really know what Labor Day even is, but for me as a local around here, I kind of view this holiday as a 3-day weekend to celebrate that all the tourists are not going to come back for like 9 months. So if you're not from here, we're glad you're here, but I'm kind of pumped to not see any out-of-state license plates for a couple months. No, guys, my name's Cotter, and I'm the Next Steps pastor here at Bayshore. And whether you are from here or whether you are from somewhere else, we're just glad that you're here hanging out with us on your 3-day weekend. And I'm pumped for you guys in the room. We also have a crew joining us online, and I have some special people I want to shout out online. My family is watching online. So my wife, Emily, and our dog, Koa, and our son that was just born like 3 weeks ago. They're all watching online, so can we make some noise for them and for all of our online family? So we have been in this series these past few weeks where we've been looking at this guy named Joseph. And the Joseph we're looking at is the Joseph from Genesis, or as I like to call him, the colorful coat Joseph. Now, I don't know if my seminary professors would be super pumped about that's how I remember him, but my Sunday school teachers would definitely be proud that that's how I remember this guy, because there's a few different Josephs in the Bible. But this Joseph from Genesis, man, he went through some crazy things. And so we've been looking at a few of those things these past few weeks, and we saw how he was the favorite son of his father. And this wasn't one of those situations where he just thought that he was the favorite. No, his dad literally made him a colorful coat to say, "You are my favorite son." So that didn't go over super well with his brothers, and they did what any jealous brothers would do. They threw him in a pit. So they threw him in this pit, and then they felt kind of bad, and so they rescued him out of the pit, only to sell him to some random merchants. So Joseph went through some crazy things, and then he ended up in Egypt, and he went through some trials there in Egypt. But after some time, he kind of rose in power in Egypt, and Pharaoh put him in charge over all of the land. And Joseph loved God, and God gave him this dream that there would be this famine in Egypt. And so he was very wise, and he stored up all of this food so that Egypt had food in the middle of this famine when nobody else really did. And so we've been looking at this guy, Joseph, for the past few weeks in August, and as we're into September. And I don't know about you guys, but this time of year, it always kind of reminds me of like some college memories. Does anybody else have some college flashbacks around this time of year? This is like the time when the tourists kind of leave the beaches, but I still live in the town where I went to college. So all of the college kids just come in to town this time of year. So our Chipotle just gets really, really crowded, and it's not ideal at all. So I was over at our Chipotle the other day, and I waited in line for 3 hours, and then I was on my way home, and I went past the college that I went to, and I saw our gym, the gym building that we had. It reminded me of this PE class that I had when I was in school, and that PE class is home to one of the most awkward situations that I've ever found myself in my entire life. And this was one of those classes that was like a general education class, so everybody had to take it. It didn't matter if you wanted to exercise or not. If you were going to graduate, you had to exercise, at least for a couple credits. And so we were in this class and just filled with a bunch of people that had no interest in being there. But we were taking this class, and one day we were playing this game of kickball. And kickball is awesome because baseball can be a little boring, but kickball, like, you don't just have to throw the ball to the base before somebody gets there. You can peg them with the ball. So kickball is amazing. So we were playing kickball with one of those like 4-square balls, one of the awesome ones that, it's got a little sting to it when you hit somebody with it. So we were playing this game, and this girl came up to kick, and she was friends with my friends, and so I knew that she really had no interest in this class. at all. But she comes up and she kicks the ball over everybody's heads. And it was like the most amazing kick. And so I'm out in the center field and so I like see this ball and something you should know about me is I'm a little bit overly competitive. Winning is something that I value very highly. And so we're in this gym class that doesn't matter, in a game of kickball that doesn't matter. So winning probably shouldn't have been the priority, but I really wanted to win. So this ball goes way over my head, and so I'm sprinting all the way back to the back wall in our gym. And as soon as I'm about to get to the ball, I kind of peek over my shoulder to see where she's at. She's coming around. She's almost to second base. And so I just grab the ball. I don't even look, and I just launch this ball as hard as I can. One of my friends snapped a picture of this. It was that. The costume, the hair, everything. That was it. And so I launched this ball, and no joke, I was like 30 yards away from where this girl was. Hit her right in the knee, right before she got to second base. She was out. I was so psyched. And then I saw her on the ground crying. No joke, on the ground crying. I had hit this girl right in the side of her kneecap. And so she was like on the ground. And so I went from being so psyched and feeling so good about myself to feeling very, very terrible about myself. And so she was on the ground crying, and I just felt so bad, and it was so awkward. And she showed up to class a couple days later on crutches with a giant dodgeball-sized bruise on the side of her leg. So I felt really awkward. I don't think she talked to me for the rest of the semester. It was just a really awkward situation. And so in our story, Joseph is headed for a really awkward encounter himself. And we got a verse we'll toss up on the screen. If you guys want to follow along this morning, all of our verses are going to be up on our screens. But if you want a Bible, or if you got a friend that wants a Bible, we've got free ones out on the table out in the lobby next to the coffee. But this verse comes from Genesis 41. And so it says, all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. So the world was in the middle of this crazy famine, and there was no food anywhere except Egypt. And so all the world was coming to Egypt to get this grain, and all the world included Joseph's brothers, the same guys that threw him in the pit and then rescued him and then sold him into slavery and then pretended to their dad like he was dead. And so all of them are coming to Egypt to see him, and they didn't know that he was there, but when he saw them, he knew who they were, and it was just this really awkward situation. And for Joseph, it was crazy because he had come so far in the years since they had betrayed him and abandoned him, and there's no way that was something that he was able to forget. Their jealousy, their decision to try to kill him and then sell him, that forever changed his life, and he hadn't ever gone back to his family after that day. He never got to see him. He never got to return home and see his dad. And then so this day his brothers come and he sees them, and this time he's kind of in a power position. He's in Egypt. He's got the food. Nobody else has food, and he's got it. And so this morning there's three things I think we can learn from how Joseph handles this situation. There's three lessons about how he treated his brothers that I believe will change the way that we react when somebody hurts us. So we're going to hop into this story, and we're going to hop in chapter 45. So we'll put this up on the screen. So it says, "Then Joseph said to his brothers, 'Come close to me.' When they had done so, he said, 'I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt.'" Can you imagine what they were thinking at that point? Oh no, let's get out of here. Is there food somewhere else? Is there McDonald's? So then, and now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all of Egypt. What a crazy, crazy moment. So when Joseph saw his brothers, he knew exactly who they were, but they didn't recognize him at first. And so Joseph had to tell them who he was again. And the Bible tells us that when he first told them who he was, they couldn't even speak because they were so terrified. And I can't even imagine the fear that had to be going through their minds. But what's so interesting is, even though they must have been thinking, he's going to kill us. He's not going to give us any food. But Joseph wasn't looking for revenge. He could have yelled at them for the way that they treated him and the pain that they caused him. But instead, he told them to not be distressed. He told them to not be angry with themselves. And that's crazy. That is, honestly, that's not usually what I think when somebody hurts me. I'm usually thinking, all right, you hurt me. I want you to know what you did. I want you to apologize. I want you to make sure that we're clear that it's not happening again. But that's not how Joseph reacted at all. He didn't care about that. He wasn't focused on himself in the situation. What he was focused on was God's plan for what happened. So Joseph looked to God's plan rather than his own pain. And that's the first lesson that we can learn from Joseph this morning. Joseph looked beyond his hurt to God's purpose. He looked beyond his hurt to God's purpose. And let's put verse 5 back up on the screen one more time. It says, "Now do not be distressed. Do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." And then we'll put the next couple verses up. "But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God." 3 times Joseph points to God's plan. 3 times he says that God sent me. 3 times he focused on God's plan. And not once did he point a finger at his brothers and blame them for that situation. So what do we take away from this for us? Well, let's start here. How many of you guys have ever been wronged by someone or ever been hurt by someone? All of us, probably like double hands, like triple hands. And when we're hurt, and whether it's somebody betraying us or breaking our trust, or maybe you've been thrown in a pit by some jealous brothers, whatever it is, our first reaction is to think about how we're affected by the wrong that's been done to us. But instead of staying there and remaining focused on our pain, we can look beyond how we've been hurt to see how God is working. You know, we sang that song Waymaker this morning, and the words that I love in that song is the part that says, "Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working." And look, God is not just working in our lives when things are going well. God is also working in our lives when we're in the middle of pain, when we're in the middle of hurt. God was working in Joseph's life while he was in the pit, while his brothers were selling his life away. In Joseph's worst moments, God was still working for him, and he was orchestrating a plan behind the scenes, even if Joseph couldn't see it at the time. You know, Joseph, he didn't know that the pit was a part of God's plan. He didn't know that being sold into slavery or that being thrown in jail was a part of God's plan, but all of it was. God was working even in those terrifying moments that he experienced. And I think the most amazing thing that Joseph says in his whole story comes from Genesis 50. And we'll put this on the screen. This is him talking to his brothers, the same guys that tried to kill him. Look at what this says. He says, "You planned evil against me. God planned it for good." His brothers planned evil against him, but God planned it for good. Even in this ultimate betrayal where his brothers tried to kill him, Joseph could still see how God was working in his life. And what I want you guys to know this morning is that God is working in all of our lives. He's working when life's going well, but he's also working in our low points, in our pain, and in our hurt. And look, if you leave here today with one thing, so what I want you to walk away with, know that God loves you. And while the people around you may hurt you, and they may abandon you, and they may betray you, God never will. God's love for you is constant, and it's eternal. And look, it's so hard when we experience pain and hurt and rejection and betrayal from the people around us, but that's not a reflection of how God feels about us. So when people hurt you, remember that God is working in that situation to bring about good. It may be hard to feel, it may be hard to see, but God is always working in our lives. And the Bible says in Romans that all things work together for the good of those who love God. And so if you love Jesus, you can know that God is working every single thing in your life for good. And I love that, because when we go through challenges, when we go through difficult times, it can be really hard to find positive things to hold on to. But knowing that God has a plan, knowing that God has a plan and a purpose for the pain that we're experiencing, man, that is so important to us to get us through and to help us so that we can look past our pain and see God's purpose, because God promises to always be working in our lives. Now, let's hop back into the story, and we're going to jump forward a little bit in this story. So at this point, Joseph and his brothers have been reunited. He's been reunited with his dad, and so they've all moved to Egypt. And so they're all living there, and it's peaceful. He's forgiven them, and they're doing really well. But after some time, Joseph's father died. And when that happened, his brothers started to get a little suspicious. They were thinking, okay, now our dad's died. Are you going to start coming after us again? And so their circumstances changed, and they weren't sure what to think about Joseph. So we'll put this up on the screen. This is chapter 50, verse 15. And so it says, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him? And then we'll jump down to verse 19. Verse 19 says, but Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. So his brothers were scared. They thought that once their father had passed away, that Joseph was going to come after them. But Joseph says that holding them accountable for what they did was not his responsibility. It was not on him to get back at them. And then he took it a step further. Let's put verse 21 back up on the screen. This says, so then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph's father dying, his circumstances changing, it didn't change the way that he was going to treat his brothers, because he had completely forgiven them for what they had done. He wasn't holding on to a grudge. He wasn't waiting for an opportunity to get even. He'd moved on from his hurt, and that meant that he was going to treat them with love and mercy no matter what their circumstances were. And that brings us to the second thing that we can learn from Joseph, and that's that mercy is more rewarding than revenge. Mercy is more rewarding than revenge. See, Joseph had this opportunity to get back at his brothers, to make their lives just totally miserable and repay them for what they had done. But instead, he went out of his way to reassure them, to be kind to them, and he even promised to provide for their children. And by doing that, he showed God's love to them in that situation. He used that situation as an opportunity to be a light for God rather than an opportunity for him to get even. Now this coming Thursday is a huge day. Does anybody know what this coming Thursday is? Football. Yes, football. I'm pumped about football. I don't know if you guys are pumped about football. So this is a huge day. I don't know if you're a Ravens fan, a Steelers fan, a 2017 Super Bowl champion Eagles fan, or a fan of the Cowboys who haven't been to the Super Bowl since before I was born. I think we can all agree that football season starting up is awesome. And with football starting up this week, it reminds me of the time of year when I used to start playing high school sports. We'd always start soccer practice around this time. How many of you guys played sports when you were in high school? Yes, high school sports were awesome, man. That was my only motivation to get good grades, was so I could keep playing sports. So I played soccer and I played basketball. And when I played basketball, I was like a shooting guard on the team. And I got a picture of me from when I used to play basketball we can toss up on the screen. That was it. That was my pose. I mean, that's just kind of every time I would dunk, I just felt like I had to do that. No, I'm just kidding. I got another picture. This is probably more accurate. I didn't have those goggles, but those are some amazing goggles. But I played basketball in high school, and as you can tell from my story earlier about kickball, I was pretty competitive. So I would get really, really into the games, and when our games would get like really intense, and it would be really important moments, what I tried to do was I'd always try to just remind myself that it was just a game, and not to get too caught up in it. And so what I would do is I would try to make an effort to help people on the other team up whenever they fell down. And so it was just a small thing, but it just kind of helped me stay level-headed and not get overly competitive and start going after their knees like I went after that girl in college's knees. So a few years after I graduated high school, I was in college, and I met this guy in a Bible study, and he went to a rival high school, and they played basketball against us, and I don't really remember playing against him, but as soon as I met him, he remembered me as the guy that used to help people up during basketball games. And I thought that was so neat because, he didn't remember that we beat his team every single time we played him, which we did, and by a lot. And he didn't remember that we won the championship 3 out of 4 years, which we did. But he didn't remember any of that. None of that was important to him. What he remembered was that I would show mercy to the guys on the other team, that I would help them up. And that's what left a lasting impact on him. And so I just think that's really cool, because when we're wronged by someone, looking out for ourselves, trying to get even for ourselves, that's not going to leave a lasting impact on people. But showing mercy to people, that is going to leave a lasting impact on them. And so today, when you're leaving and you're driving home, if you get cut off by somebody with a Pennsylvania license plate, or any license plate. I'm going after Pennsylvania people today, I'm sorry. But no, if you get cut off, it's going to leave a better impact by you showing mercy and letting go of it than it is if you ride their bumper for the next 20 minutes. And every single day, we have opportunities with our spouse, with our kids, with our friends, with our coworkers to either try to get even with them or to show them mercy. And Joseph, he had every opportunity to get back at his brothers, and it would have been so justified if he got back at them, but he instead chose to show mercy. He chose to show them love. And check out this verse from Matthew 5. We'll put this up. This is Jesus talking here, and I love this. He says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Our purpose in this life is not to get even with the people who wrong us. Our purpose in this life is this. Our purpose in this life is to reflect God's love and his mercy so that the people around us will be able to experience God's love as well. So when we're wronged, we can follow the example of Joseph and let go of our hurt and show mercy to the people that are around us. And there's one more lesson that I want us to take away from this story this morning. And we're going to hop backwards a little bit. So we jumped forward, and now we're jumping backwards a little. So Joseph had told his brothers who he was. And then he had said, okay, now what I want you guys to do, I want you to go home. I want you to pack up everything you've got. I want you to bring everybody back here and live here in Egypt. And so his brothers did that. They left, they went back home, they packed their things up, they came back to Egypt, and that's where we're going to hop back in chapter 47. So we'll put this up. So it says, Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramses, as Pharaoh directed. And so Joseph's brothers tried to kill him, and Joseph repaid them by bringing them to Egypt, the only place that had food in the middle of this famine, and by giving them property in the best part of the land. He went all out for them, and he gave them the best of the best. And I think this is such a cool lesson about forgiveness for us. So the third thing that we can take away from this story is that Joseph advocated for his brothers. Joseph advocated for his brothers. He didn't just let go of the hurt that they caused him. He went beyond that to advocate for them before Pharaoh. And he made sure that they would be able to have a safe place to live, that they would have plenty of food. And then he made sure that they would be given some of the best property. And here's how this impacts us, because I think a lot of times when we think about forgiveness, we view it as we view the finish line of forgiveness as a reset to being neutral towards someone. You know, when someone wrongs us, we are mad and we are angry and we are upset. And then when we forgive, we think that we're just kind of coming back to the middle and we're just kind of neutral. We're a place where we're not angry and upset. And this is often what we see as the finish line of forgiveness. We think that it's a win because we're no longer angry and mad and upset at somebody. But what Joseph did went so far beyond that. He went beyond a neutral relationship with his brothers to advocate for them, to want what was best for them. And that's a picture of complete forgiveness. If we're still holding on to a grudge, man, we are not going to go out of our way to want what's best for the people around us. But when we let go, when we've completely forgiven, then we can view the person who's hurt us through a lens that's no longer impacted by the wrongs that they've done to us. And Joseph is such a great example of this because he had forgiven his brothers so completely that he wanted what was best for them. And he went above and beyond for them. And man, that is a tough thing to do. If I can be super real with you guys, when I think about my life, there are two people in my life who have hurt me more than anyone else, and people who betrayed me and lied to me and just did some really messed up things. And when I think about those situations and how I approach forgiveness in those relationships, I went from being mad and upset and hurt, and I feel like I got to a place where I was kind of neutral towards those people. And I wasn't upset anymore, and I wasn't mad. But while I've been studying the story of Joseph, I felt convicted that I haven't really gotten to the real finish line of forgiveness, because I thought being neutral was the end goal. But what Joseph's example shows us is that there's so much more to forgiveness than just being neutral towards someone. He shows us an example of complete forgiveness by advocating for his brothers, by wanting to bless them, by wanting to give them the best of the best. And as I've studied this, I've realized that I've got work to do in my life in this area. And so I've been praying for God to do a work in my heart and those relationships. And I've been praying for a couple key things. I'm praying for God to give me more love for those people and to have the same love for them that he has. And I've been praying for God to take away any lingering hurt and anger that I have. And then I've been praying for God to help me show complete forgiveness to them, because I don't want to be satisfied with just moving from anger to neutrality. I don't want to just be neutral towards people that have hurt me. I want to go the extra mile, and I want to advocate for them. I want to want what's best for them. And beyond Joseph's example, what inspires me to want to show complete forgiveness is what Jesus has done for me. Because I've sinned. I've broken God's commands. I've made mistakes. And those mistakes have hurt God. And that sin is offensive to him. But God, his response to that wasn't to punish me. His response was to sacrifice his son to give me eternal life. And that's his response to all of us. When we deserve punishment, God gave us mercy when he chose to advocate for us because he loves us. And while we were still sinning, while we're still rejecting God, God chose to give us the best. He chose to bless us. And that's the ultimate display of love. So we can forgive others because we see Joseph forgiving his brothers, and because we see how Jesus chose to forgive us. And we can move beyond our hurt to show love and to really want what's best for everyone around us that's hurt us, because that's what Jesus has done for us. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for this story of Joseph, and I thank you for all that we can learn from him and just how he sought you in the middle of hurt and betrayal. And God, I pray that you would help us to see that you are always working in our circumstances, no matter what pain we're feeling, no matter how difficult life feels. I pray that you would help us to know that you're in control and that you love us and that you are ultimately working our circumstances for what is best. And God, I pray that you would help us to have that same love that you have for us, for the people around us. I pray that we would not stop in our forgiveness to just be neutral, but I pray that we go the extra mile to want to bless the people who have hurt us. And I pray all this in your name. Amen.